The shipping industry has always been rooted in safety and compliance, but as trade gets more complex and technology moves faster, the way we manage risk is changing too. At RightShip, that transformation isn't just about digitizing old processes, it's about reimagining how we evaluate, manage, and act on risk altogether. And at the center of that shift is our very own product and technology team. Today, I'm joined by Marlon Grech, our Chief of Product and Technology Officer, to unpack how product design and AI are helping us rethink safety and sustainability across the global shipping industry. Welcome, Marlon.
Hi.
Hi. All right, so let's just dive right into the first question, Marlon. You have had a front row seat to transforming maritime risk management through tech and AI. So I wanted to understand, how does RightShip approach product discovery? How do we decide what to build? What kind of customer problems do we aim to solve?
Sure. I mean, look, reality is that it's no different than any other product company would go to solve these problems for the industry. So it really starts and it's rooted in the voice of customer. We have a product strategy that aims to deliver on key customer outcomes, which then drives a roadmap. Each roadmap item that we put for our strategy to be realized, it then goes through a product process, which again is a collaboration between the product team and customers. So what we do there is we start off with an opportunity discovery where our product team, side by side with real users of the platform or potential users of the platform, would go deep on understanding the problem. You could think of it in the context of Maritime, just like root cause analysis happens in a PSC closeout or an incident closeout. So it starts with understanding the problem. We then move into solution discovery, where we double click on, well, how could we solve it? And is there a willingness to use a solution from RightShip if we are to really solve such a problem? And once that is validated, again, side by side with the customer, we go into planning, where we go deep, and that's where you'll see our geeks come all together and really flesh out how we can make this solution a reality, which then goes to development. And lastly, we launch and go into evaluation, where we really study the adoption of the tool, the usage, and what patterns we're seeing so that we can continuously improve. And really, it's a process where it's not linear. It's an innovation loop. So you release, you test, you get feedback, and you always cycle. So it's really that drives the innovation at RightShip.
Thank you for sharing that. I think we will have a lot more to talk about AI in the later questions. I wanted to talk a little bit more about risk management because risk management has traditionally been very manual and process heavy. What were the key gaps you saw in the status quo that made you feel we could do things differently?
Yeah. No, it's a really good question and one that I get asked quite a bit. So my background before Maritime, it was investment banking as a technologist in an investment banking industry. And one key distinction I see is that when it comes to maritime processes, there's still a lot of manual processes. Digitalization in certain industries, I feel, advanced at a faster pace. So, for example, you see certain workflows whereby two companies talking and their workflow is really rooted in email and PDF files being shared as attachments. In other industries, you would see two systems talking to each other through APIs. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but and it's really, I would think that one of the core issues there is the complexities and the nuances that the maritime industry has. However, then a side effect of this is the fact that without the digitalization, it's more difficult to automate. And with manual processing, then what happens is that sometimes you have a subject matter expert that is spending their time on administrative tasks rather than doing what they should be focusing on. So scaling becomes a problem. The other issue I see, which is really derives from the fact that it's really hard to get aggregated data. We see an industry where data is really siloed because If data is not being passed through APIs and is not being aggregated, it's just sitting in emails, then it's really hard for you to aggregate 1 year worth of data, right? Like, how do you do it? Do you go through all your emails and you stitch them together? Well, it's really hard. It's not impossible, but it's hard. So I think the lack of digitalization, even though it's improving quite drastically, especially now with AI, it's still something where I believe Maritime is still 2 steps back.
Thank you for sharing. What I hear is the biggest shift we're seeing now is that technology is involved in a lot of things that we don't. So one big key thing that's happening is obviously AI, right? So
Yeah.
it's definitely helping us to take the intent of where we want to be a little bit further. So maybe let's just talk a little bit about RightShip's AI. Could you maybe start by explaining what does agentic AI mean in the context of RightShip?
Yeah, sure. So agentic AI is really, I call it phase two of AI. We started with general purpose AI, and now we're seeing agentic AI coming into play. And the real difference is that it's AI that can take action rather than just giving you, you prompted something and it gives you an answer. Agentic AI, it's really a framework how you can have specialized AI agents that are really good at completing a particular task. And what's key and how we implement it here at RightShip is that we identify key tasks, key areas where we want to have these specialized agent. And we set them up in a workflow that they are working side by side with our humans so that we use AI where it's really needed to do all the mundane tasks, to be able to scale certain operations, which in the past we couldn't because of sheer human limitation. So we put these AIs side by side with our humans so that they act as decision support. They act as action takers on certain tasks. That way, you are able to scale really fast. The other thing that we use these AI agents for is to ensure certain consistency. Sometimes humans, they can be subjective. And from one output to another, you're sort of constrained when it comes to keeping certain consistency for certain tasks. With AI, we see that we can introduce that consistency at a scale without cost. So it means that we can do more with with it costing less, which means that it enables us to scale really, really well.
All right, so you talked a little bit about consistency and automation for mundane tasks. So could you make it a little bit more tangible and walk us through how that thinking shows up in one of our products?
Yeah, sure, sure. So if we take, let's take, for example, Due Diligence Hub that we've launched recently. When you think about the running vetting for a vessel, what you really see is an exchange of documents many times and a set of requirements to check certain data points, right? What we've looked at how our teams are running vets, and we really asked how can we use agentic AI to be able to make this perform better? How do we make sure that the human focuses on taking the final decision and feeling that they are supported in that decision making? So we've introduced AI agents that, for example, would read a file and only highlight the things that the human needs to see. If you open a class status report, for example, you'll find certain files that are 40, 50 pages. But then when you look at what the human is actually reading, well, they're looking at 10 lines in all those 50 pages. So what we're doing is we're applying AI to be able to understand this unstructured data and to only highlight the parts that are relevant for the decision making. That way, it's much more streamlined, right? So that it can go really, really fast. If you look at another product, like for example, our new Fleet Focus that we released as part of Right Fleet, you'll see that where we're using AI is to be able to aggregate different sources of data, such as PSC, RightShip inspections, and incidents, and be able to allow the AI to read all the files, all the closeouts, and come up with themes that really show correlations between different groups of data. That way you can see, let's say, lifeboats, and you want to see anything that had been related to lifeboats across all the different sources. Well, now you can do it. And because we allow the AI to do these categories, well, then we can track how it's doing over time. So we can do a trend line for a particular category so that you can see month by month, are there more issues around that category that are going up? And if you did something like a preventative measure that you applied, is that then making the trend going downwards? So really we're using AI to be able to scale operations.
I mean, it sounds like AI is sort of like a game changer for vessel risk valuation and the shipping industry. There's so many AI products that's coming out in the market. So, how do you think our approach is slightly different from the others that you have seen in the market?
That's a tough question to answer because of so many permutations. However, what I think we're doing, what we're really investing in is making sure that we use AI to amplify the output of the human. We want to use AI to make sure that especially subject matter experts. And I say this because I work side by side with these guys, and you can see the passion that they have for the maritime industry. They've been out there at sea. They felt the pain of certain incidents happening, of certain measures not being taken, or not having the time to invest in safety. And really, what it boils down to is I want to see these guys invest their time in doing things of real value rather than doing administrative work. So investing a lot in AI is making sure that wherever we can get the AI to complete certain tasks, especially administrative tasks, or especially things like highlighting certain text in documents, calculating certain things that you can just automate. By doing this, I believe that we're making the human a much more valuable resource. So to me, that's a really good way to use AI. I think AI now got to a point where it's making many things that before were really expensive to build. Like, for example, just parsing an unstructured data set like a PDF. Before, it wasn't easy. Let's put it that way. Now, it doesn't really matter what format it is, or even the language for that matter. AI is able to read and then translate it in however you want to translate it. So it's really enabling streamlining of these workflows, ensuring that we use our humans to emit real value.
All right. I heard you talk about how it's reading a lot of our documents and it's helping a lot of people who have been at sea and they have been doing a lot of this work manually for many, many years, right? So I'm wondering if I'm in their shoes, I would be thinking about security and data and privacy, right? So how have we built safeguards into our AI tools to ensure that they remain trustworthy and compliant?
Yeah. No, that's a really good question, and I think an important one. The way I see it is it all starts from having a really solid data foundation, right? And that's true if you're using AI or even if you're just creating a user interface on top of your data. In reality, what really matters is that you have solid data foundation. In IT, we have this saying, garbage in, garbage out. That is also very much true in the case of AI. So your data foundations are really critical. At RightShip, we've implemented this framework of a well-governed data products. So when we build products, we actually don't start from user interfaces and all of that. We actually start from the data itself. We make sure that we have good data sources, and we make sure that we have a really well-defined data governance framework, making sure that data freshness, that the data is being validated, and that over time it doesn't drift in one direction or another. So having well-governed data products is your first step. But then on top of that, especially when you have AI, you need something where you have privacy by design. You want to make sure that when the AI is accessing data, well, that there are checks and balances for each and every AI agent, and for who that AI agent is performing the actual task. So we have this concept of making sure that there's data lineage, and with that, ensuring that each AI agent is being treated just like a human that is logging into the platform is treated. There's a level of authorization and authentication that is happening with each request the AI is doing against our data. I would say in terms of our approach, how we look at this is the guardrails that we put for our AI are really put there just like if you think about a car and its brake system, the brakes are there not to slow down the car, but the brakes are there so that you can speed and you can speed with confidence that there are the brakes there, and when you press them, they will help you slow down. So we implement AI with that mindset. So, for example, one of the things that we do as a braking system is, well, for certain decisions or for certain wherever we see that we need the human in the loop, we always have a mechanism for the human to come in and override. So you see that collaboration between our AI and then our humans, with our humans always governing whatever the AI is generating.
That's a great analogy. We've talked a lot about AI so far, and I think it's great that you shared how, it's not just shaping the industry, but also the way that we think and we build at RightShip. I wanted to start with Due Diligence Hub because I think you talked about it earlier on. So maybe just share a little bit more about who is Due Diligence Hub for and how is it changing the way vetting teams operate.
Yeah, RightShip has been in the business of vetting for the last 24 years. So, well, over the years, we've really mastered that service delivery. So when it came to Due Diligence Hub, what really happened there is we took a couple of steps back and said, well, is everyone vetting with RightShip? Well, not really, right? It shouldn't. There's loads of teams out there that they're running vetting themselves with their own in-house vetting team. And we really want to make sure that all the good lessons that we've learned and all the technology that we invested in over the time, we are able to export it and to be able to give it to these teams so that they can do what we do, so that they have the best of class technology, just like our vetting teams have the best of class technology. So when it comes to Due Diligence Hub, that's really what we try to do. We try to export our technology, our ways of working, give access to certain data that we have access to, so that we make sure that we can empower vetting teams all around the world in different industries to be able to run vetting as a state-of-the-art process. We believe that, again, back to our principles, we want to make sure that SMEs are getting the best out of their time, making sure that they have the tooling that they need to be able to get the job done. When we've spoke with many of these in-house vetting teams, we found that many of them, they're still using bespoke tooling, because you see them using email, you see them using attachments and then Excel files all around. So yeah, that creates for a lot of inefficiencies. You really don't have a process where everything can be aggregated and monitored. So with Due Diligence Hub, we try to address some of these pain points.
Do you mind sharing a little bit more about what are some of the pain points that they had shared during the product discovery phase, besides, having so many different data sets all around?
Yes. So one of the big pain points was lack of tooling. So many would resort to, let's call them general purpose tooling, such as Excel, email, to be able to run this vetting process. Another big pain point, which we can delve into in a bit more detail, was that many times they don't have the data to be able to perform the job, but they need to make a decision in a very short period of time. So a lot of thinking went into what is it this data that they need and how can we get it to them faster, right? That's how, for example, we started coming up with document management. Because in reality, when you look at vetting, in order for you to vet a vessel, you need a number of documents. And if you don't have those documents, well, you're really taking a guess. You're not really making a decision founded on the real data. So that was another big pain point. And then the other thing was lack of time and a lot of time pressure. So the commercial teams would be putting the pressure on because they need the vessel, they need to make a decision to move forward with the transaction. But if you're in vetting and you need to make a decision and you don't have the data with you, well, that's a problem, right? So that's also something that we tried to streamline. And that's where, as well, AI played a big part, right? Because many times when you think of how AI is able to read a document and be able to surface the data to whoever is doing the vet to be able to make a decision, well, think of it on the other side. Many times what happens is that a ship manager will send a file and they think that they sent the correct file, right? They are in a time zone, let's say that they're in Europe. Then they're sending it to someone that is in Asia, so different time zone. And let's say that they make a mistake. They send the wrong file or an outdated file. Well, that means that most probably you're losing a day there, right? Because someone else will go to sleep and then the following morning, the person can react to the feedback. But if you have AI in the middle, the AI can give an instant feedback to the submitter. The AI can tell the submitter, hey, this file is incorrect, and this is why it's incorrect. And you basically end up saving 24 hours. So it's not just helping who is running the vet, it's also helping who is submitting data for the vet, streamlining the whole process overall.
Thanks. I think DMCs or document management center sounds like something we would talk about in next question. But early on, you talked about Right Fleet, right? So I think Right Fleet has come a long way. It's not a new product, but recently we launched Fleet Focus, PSC RiskIQ, which has been added to Right Fleet. So can you walk us through why these updates were needed?
Yeah, sure. So look, product is never static. It's always evolving. But I think at RightShip, we're at a critical point in time where we're really investing a lot in product and in technology. We're really moving from just offering services to customers to also offering products that are value creating for these customers. And especially when it comes to owners and managers, we saw a massive opportunity where traditionally RightShip was giving access to data. It was making owners and managers, it was giving the ability for owners and managers to be able to log into the RightShip platform, go to their vessels and see their safety score, GHG, etc. Right? Because it was still early days, it was sort of, we give you the data and then you make your own decisions. And then we don't really know so much in terms of what you want to do with the data. So we'll just give you all the data and you do the rest, right? We're now moving into another phase where we're saying, well, we're learning because of this co-creation product process that we have. We're learning in terms of the jobs to be done for these owners and managers. We're seeing, for example, when it comes to PSC RiskIQ, we're seeing that many of them are spending a lot of time preparing their vessel when it comes to PSC, making sure that their vessels won't get detained and that their vessels will minimize the number of deficiencies that if an inspector is to inspect your vessel would find. So what could RightShip do for these owners measures? We have a lot of data. We can aggregate it, we can surface it up to the owners and managers so that rather than them doing that themselves, we can help them do it. And that's where AI, of course, plays a big part in that. So really, it's you're seeing PSC RiskIQ that we've launched early on, then Fleet Focus, and you'll see more of these tools that are part of our Right Fleet subscription that are really helping the owner and manager use our data more efficiently and really getting the value out of our data much quicker, right? Rather than them having to do all the work, we're getting our products to do some work for them.
From what you're saying, it's a lot of like what we mentioned, right? Consistency and automation, and making sure that when we're aggregating the data, they are getting the insights out of a consistent reading from all the data that we have, right?
Correct, correct. Rather than them doing all the hard work, well, let's share it together, right?
All right. Awesome. I think since we talked about, Right Fleet, which is for owners and managers, is Due Diligence Hub, which is for our charterers and ports and terminals, maybe let's go back to talk about Document Management Center, which you sort of briefly touched on. So for many of us, this feels like a foundational shift in how vessel documentation is being handled. We have not really seen that many solutions out there that are similar to this, not just, within RightShip, but across the industry, right? So can you walk us through what Document Management Center is, what your vision for DMC is, and what role does it play in the future of collaborative risk management?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, look, when it comes to document management center, the genesis of it all really started when we started looking, when we started taking a closer look at our vetting service. And the question we asked ourselves is, how might we make vetting even faster? And at the beginning, we started looking into various ways how our team can streamline more the process. But what came out of that discovery was really that a lot of time, when you look at a vet and it's taking a lot of time, many times it's because there is someone waiting for a particular document. Because when it comes to vetting, well, you need to ask for various different documentation from ship managers to be able to complete the vet. And when you look at the vet, the waiting always starts when you start the vet itself. So someone requests a vet, from that point in time, the clock starts ticking. And we then asked, well, why does it have to start only when the request is being sent? What if RightShip could have a mechanism where managers can proactively upload the data so that when a charter asks for a vessel to be vet, we can give an instant result back. So that's how it all started. It all started from the basic concept of, well, for those that want to be proactive, let's let them. Let's make the tooling available so that they can make sure that their requirements are already fulfilled. And that way, we can make a faster decision on the vessel. So that's how it started. But then when you look at it started evolving, well, we started going deeper and asking, why do you ask for that document when you're vetting? Right? And by asking why, well, then you quickly realize that you're asking the document to validate a particular requirement. Probably a document that is really, really large is being shared when really you need just one line or two. So that's where we're also now using AI on top of document management. One, so that the AI can validate what you're uploading so that you can have instant feedback in terms of if this document is what is being asked for, if this document is correct, right? And secondly, and on the other side, it's to be able to get to a point where these documents are well understood by our system so that you, in a future version, you can simply ask a question to our document management. It will find the right document and it will highlight the right place rather than people having to go through all these different pages. That way, charterers are able to define their requirements and what they need upfront, and then owners and managers can upload these documents, and these questions start being surfaced in a much more streamlined manner. So that's really the direction we're going with in terms of document management.
Since we talked a lot about like collaboration and how document management center, it's like the bridge between a charterer and an owner and manager, right? From your perspective, what's the biggest gap in how inspections are currently conducted, and is there a need for a shift? Because I think DMC does play a role in this, and how does it basically play in the future of inspection?
I think what we need to understand when it comes to inspections is when you speak with customers, one of the biggest pain points of inspection is that sometimes the crew is already super busy, right? So having someone on board of the vessel for 12 hours, well, that's a lot of time. 12 hours maybe is just a number for you and I, but imagine you're doing a 12-hour shift. That's a long shift, right?
Yeah.
So so when we look at what we want to do with inspection is, well, let's try to make it shorter. Let's try to figure out ways how we could shorten the time on board the vessel. Because that time that our inspector is there, well, that means maybe someone should be on their break and they're not taking their break. I mean, the overarching goal, let's say, is let's ensure that the inspection has the best quality it can have, but at the same time, let's try to shorten the time on board. And one thing that we're doing now with hybrid inspections was when we're looking at the overall inspection, there is a portion of the inspection where the inspector is reviewing a bunch of documents. So they sit with the guys on board and they go through a number of documents. And we asked, well, could that be done offline? Could the ship manager upload these documents up front? And we are able to process those documents and ensure compliance and the validity offline. And you know what? We said, let's try it out. And that's where document management also played a part, whereby from a RightShip perspective, we define the list of documents that you need. There is a RightShip risk requirement on our document management that owners and managers can subscribe to. And when the manager uploads the documents, then the inspector will be able to process these documents upfront. We were estimating that this could save you up to 2 hours, which is quite sizable. Of course, this is the first step. The direction to travel for us is very clear. It's let's try to shorten as much as possible the inspection time. So what you'll see in the future is more of these initiatives. We started with documents, but definitely we're working on many initiatives to figure out what else could happen offline, what else could be verified not on board, and then ensure that our inspector is focusing their time on what really matters to be boots on ship during the inspection. So again, I think hybrid inspection is a good first start, but definitely it's just the beginning. You'll see much more of these initiatives coming very soon.
All right. Before we wrap up, maybe I just want to get to shift gears a little bit and then get a bit more personal with you. We talked a lot about tech and AI, and you have been in the financial industry before this and now in maritime. So maybe just from your point of view, if you could fast forward like 5 years, right? What's one feature or outcome you'd love to see delivered through RightShip?
That's a good question. I mean, there's loads of these instances, but I think one of them that's really resonates with me is, look, the maritime industry is incredibly complex, and many times that's why we see a lot of these manual processes, because it's very hard to systemize them, so they are kept manual. Risk assessment in general, we see it's still very much fragmented. Not everyone does it in the same way. There's lack of consistency. It's still really time consuming, both for the charterer and also for the port and terminal, and also for the insurer, or on the other side, for the owner and the manager, right? It's really time consuming on both sides. When you look at the whole ecosystem, there's a lot of data fragmentation and data silos, which really make this even harder to solve. I'm a big believer that in 5 years' time, thanks to technology, we're able to bridge that gap a bit. By bridging that gap, making risk evaluation more accessible and making data more transparent and explainable, I think we would be closing the gap. We would be ensuring that the industry moves to a space where risk assessment is not something that you think about, but it's something that's happening with every single transaction, because this is critical to really raise the bar. But at the same time, we cannot just raise the bar and just make everyone's life even harder, right? So risk assessment needs to be simpler and more cost effective, so that it's not a question if you do it or not, but it would be just a matter of, well, it's a must.
All right, awesome. So maybe just one last question for you is what motivates you personally to keep pushing the boundaries of maritime innovation?
Yeah. So that's a good one. Look, I've been always a techie. I've always loved writing code, building stuff. Like the act of creating products was always something I was super passionate about. However, I was always building products and building technologies that I can see impact from, that I see the product making someone's life better. That has a lot of value to me. That drives me a lot. That's why I do what I do. That's why I'm passionate as I am to building products. At RightShip, I feel I get that and then some. I think RightShip has a really strong purpose. There's a lot to be done in this space. And I'm a big believer that technology, the right use of technology, will enable this vision, will enable us moving faster to achieving this vision. So if you ask me, that's what really um, wakes me up in the morning with additional energy. Let's put it this way.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing, Marlon. And also, thank you so much for the chat. It's always great hearing how your team's thinking about what's next and how all of this is coming together to make the industry safer and smarter. So I really appreciate your time and I can't wait to see where we take it from here.
Yeah. Awesome.